Welcome to the Elevate Everyday podcast. This one is going to be a little bit different. So we're going to get Herb's perspective, Coach Herb, because he's a little bit more seasoned than I am, right? So Herb's going to be turning 60 this year, believe it or not. So we're going to be talking about longevity. This is going to be a part three, guys. But this first one is longevity part one, how to work out to set yourself up for long-term health. Okay, so first question we're going to go into is Herb, what is the best way to train for longevity and why?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer is smart. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, my training over the years has had to modify. I first got into weight training. Everybody, guys, as young kids, we all lifted weights here and there. My forte when I started was martial arts, so I lifted for that. But as far as training, for longevity, you need to take and really think about your joints.
Mhm.
So for me personally, I never really got hooked into the powerlifting. I mean, I've done the three Olympic lifts. I'm in the 1500 club, all those kind of things, but you got to take care of your joints. So I would say the number one thing to train for longevity is functional movements,
Yeah.
natural range of movements, and things that really don't tax the joints.
Yeah.
Again, we're working out our muscles, trying to increase the tension on our tendons and strength, but got to take those joints and take into account when we're training too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's something. And man, I can't remember his name. Peter something. Peter, you may know who I'm talking about, Herb, but he's all about longevity. I think he's even got his own clinic. And he helps older individuals like make sure that they're setting themselves up long term. I've listened to a lot of his podcasts, and it's kind of changed my mind on some of the ways to train for our older clientele, right? And a lot of things that we can do is, add a lot of stimulus and even still do compound movements for main muscle groups, but take a lot of compression off the spine, and certain things we can do to keep the joints healthy, right? Like, for example, one thing is like instead of loading up, a ton of weight on our barbell back squat, you can do something like a loaded, um, Bulgarian split squat or a loaded split squat. You can still really load up, that single leg, but it's going to take all that compression off the spine, be better on the central nervous system, and just not be as taxing overall. Right. So I think that's a really good point. Another thing, and I've seen you do it in some of your videos that you've posted in the past on Instagram, and we've talked about it. I think you were just talking about it today with one of our older clients. Is like the belt squat, right? Like you can really load up and get a really good stimulus for your lower body again without putting all that compression on the spine. So there's certain things you can do if you're, like you said, training smart to be able to really still, challenge yourself and have that intensity level without like just, pounding those joints and everything. So that's a really good point. It's cool. And then, so let's dive into the next question. You know, um, and this is kind of like going along with training, but say you're an older individual, we're kind of like talking about that, or maybe even you're getting a little bit older, you just want to make sure you're setting yourself up long term. How often, in your opinion, Herb, should you train each muscle group?
That's a good question, Cade. And again, this has been one, I'm sure you'll see a lot of controversy after this video is posted. But I actually have read studies that individuals over the age of 60 that have not worked out a lot, one full body workout a week makes dramatic improvements. I'm like,
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
just work out once a week.
Yeah.
That makes dramatic improvements, right? So there's a difference, right? So I would say, again, I'll be 60 this year. I still plan on bodybuilding, going on stage. So 20 sets for big muscle groups. It's going to be different. I would say for the average person for longevity and health, moving forward is to train each body part twice a week.
Yeah. I think
You
that's a
know,
good rule of thumb. Yeah, and
yeah,
from all the research that I've seen, that there's a lot of research that shows like the difference between training each muscle group once versus twice. There's some benefit there, and then there's kind of diminishing turn returns from 2 to 3
right.
times a week. So I've definitely seen that. But like you said, that's a really good point. You said like with the research of older individuals, even just one time a week hitting all their muscle groups, like compared to what they were doing before, if they weren't doing that at all, there's gonna be a ton of benefit. So it's kind of has to be, okay, what have you been doing? And that's why having a conversation with someone to figure out what's optimal for you is important because anything you're doing more than what you were doing before, you're going to see benefit, right? So it kind of depends on what's your experience level, what are you doing now, and then kind of diagnosing what we need to do from there. So
Yeah.
that's a really good point. But yeah, I think kind of rule of thumb, guys, like if you can hit your muscle groups twice a week, that's going to be a little bit more beneficial than one, but there's kind of diminishing returns. Like don't feel like you got to hit each muscle group 3 times a week. Okay, so that's good. Um, and then so we talked about, the way to train for longevity and, we talked about kind of like, the power lifts and yeah, for me, I'm still doing a lot of those big lifts and everything. Um, but, I still do think strength has a place for sure in longevity. Um, so, in your opinion, Herb, because I know that you still, care about your strength. It's not like, you're just fully just isolating everything. I know you still want to be strong and all that. Like, how do you feel strength contributes to longevity?
Well, again, we're machines.
Yeah,
We're the apex predator on this planet,
yeah,
right? We want it, we fucking take it,
yeah,
right? So again, our bodies have to be the machines that we use.
yeah,
Um, so again, I just think that strength is going to basically overall strength is going to it's going to tell me how your metabolism's running. It's going to tell me how your immune system's running. You're going to be at the top of your game. We are strength creatures,
yeah,
right? We're not the supposed to be selling flowers on the street corner. We're out there knocking shit over and picking stuff up. I mean, we got to go out there and hunt. We do a lot of things. So our bodies still have a lot of that, in our DNA. So I think strength equals a lot of longevity because we just have gone through things and overcome things. I mean, I think it's much, and we're not talking about a lot, but the mindset goes hand in hand with any of this physical stuff.
hmm
You don't have the right mindset. I don't give a shit what your body's, you can't achieve it.
yeah,
But you get
yeah,
that mindset in there and you're like on fire. It's like, get out of this guy's way.
yeah,
He's coming
yeah,
through. So yeah, strength, again, we're animals that should be stronger than anybody else.
yeah. There's a couple things that pop up in my head with this one, with strength and longevity. Um, One thing, and I've heard you say it before, and this kind of goes along with the next question too, but um, injury prevention, right? I feel like having some strength, right? Like that can go a long way, to prevent falls in the future, like just being able to do things as you age. Like, uh, a lot of people think lifespan, right? I like to think about your quality of lifespan, right? Like what's your health span, right? And if you're able to do everything you want to do up until you're 80, right? As opposed to, a lot of people they end up like not being able to do a lot of things physically, in their 60s, 70s because they don't have the strength, they don't have the mobility, they're not setting themselves up physically to like have a quality life in those later years. Right. So that's what kind of comes to my mind in the strength is like, yeah, build that up because, if you don't have that in your later years and you're kind of like, depending on people taking care of you to be able to do things, like what kind of quality of life is that? Right. And then, with the injury prevention thing too, it's like when it snowed here recently and there was a freeze, like, man, I fell and I fell flat on my back hard. And I'm like, I feel like if I was just a normal person with less muscle, less strength and everything, like I probably would have like fractured my elbow and shoulder and like really messed myself up. But I feel like, as you age, you get older, I'm still young, but I feel like, I'm going to continue to do these things. And it's like if you don't do that stuff, if you don't use it, you lose it. And like, I feel like that's going to set you up more affinity to getting injured and, having stuff like that happen to you. And it's a serious deal. So what are your thoughts on that, Herb?
Yeah, again, I think um, if your body's used to shock and awe, you're not going to surprise it when you slip, fall, twist, knock into something.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's the mindset stuff too, because you're prepared, right? Again, muscle equals longevity, strength equals longevity. I'm not as articulate as what's her name, Gabrielle
Lions.
Lyons. Yeah, she's amazing. I wish I was as articulate as her to be able to say the things the way she says them.
Yeah.
But it's true. The more muscle you have, the less apt you're going to be to get a disease.
Yeah.
Again, we are creatures that if we have more muscle, we're going to be stronger, faster. The quality of life is going to be better, longevity, sleep, just
Mhm.
everything. We're going to be a
Yeah.
better functioning character of ourself.
Yeah.
Um, and I actually think there's a lot of things I'm not doing at 60 that I did at 40, but I do believe the new 40 is 60. You've got professional football players playing in their 40s. That never happened 10 years ago, Kate. Never.
Yeah. Yeah.
MMA, the fighters and stuff. When I fought, no, you were done when you were 30. Now it's like 40 and you're still rocking because people know how to train and recover and eat.
Yeah.
So yeah, longevity, not only longevity, i.e., I live longer, longevity in the sport you're in, longevity in the things that you're enjoying in life. It's like, well, I
Yeah.
used to hike a lot, but that was when I was younger. I've competed on stage against 88-year-old people, right? So again, it's like, what one person thinks is old, the other one's like,
Yeah.
just what
Yeah.
it is, right?
100%.
Yeah.
I love that mindset. Yeah, and you're already kind of talking about it with like muscle equaling longevity on some of those points, and I hear you say that a lot, with some of our older clients and clients in general. And I've shared a stat before on social media and a lot of times because this is just super eye-opening to me. But it's like you lose, I think it's 8% of your muscle every decade after 30 years old, right? That's like an average statistic. Okay, so like if you're not working on this stuff, guys, like literally your muscle is just on a pretty rapid decline, and that speeds up after I think 50 or 60, right? Pretty rapidly again. So it's something that you definitely want to be paying attention to, and a lot of people just think fat loss, weight loss, but I think even Gabrielle Lyons that you mentioned, Herb, it's like we don't have, an obesity problem, we have an under muscle problem because that
Mhm.
that leads to a lot of negative effects long term,
Yeah.
right? And that damages your metabolism, right? Because the less muscle you have, the less calories you burn at rest, your basal metabolic rate is lower, all these things. So that's huge.
Yeah.
Anything else on your end as far as muscle contributing to longevity that you would
Well, I
share?
mean, just we talk about it all the time. And yeah, clients come to us, they want to lose weight. We get that. So we spend a lot of time talking about weight loss and body fat and da 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 da. But really, what it is once I get it in my head, it's like, okay, I got to help Kate lose 30 pounds. We don't talk about it anymore. Let's build muscle.
Hmm.
Let's build some muscle. That'll take care of itself, right? It's
Yeah,
just an easier focus on something that's positive.
yeah,
But, again, as we look around the world today and the things that have gone on in the last year with the lack of control we have on so many issues now, this is the one thing you have total control over.
hmm,
You decide whether you're going to prep your food. You decide whether you're getting your ass out of bed and going to the gym. You
yeah,
decide,
yeah,
right? So this is one thing you can look at everything else, and Caden says it all the time. Let's focus on what we control and not worry about what we can't. So I can't worry about my job working double shift. I got to do it, but at the same time, I got to take care of myself,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So again, it's longevity, not only living longer, but to try to be able to keep doing this, you've got to be able to adapt and change,
yeah,
right? I mean, I used to train 6, 7 days a week. Now 4 days a week, I'm good. Got to get that recovery in there, right?
yeah,
So we just have to be smarter as we get older. That's all.
yeah. Yeah, and I'm going to go back to something you said earlier with like the one time a week, people in their 60s, they're being researched that there's so many benefits. It's like I've also seen research recently that if you've never really been a consistent person who works out or lifts your whole life, like there's research now showing like if you start when you're 60, like you can put on a significant amount of muscle mass, which is crazy, right? But like, that you get those, we call them newbie gains, like even when you're older, right? So don't think that it's too late for you if you're older and you've never really like worked out. Like you can get those newbie gains, put on 20 pounds of muscle. Like, you can get those drastic effects that a young person could get even when you're older in age for
Right.
sure. So, um, but yeah, so want to kind of talk about the hormone side, and we'll do a whole, another podcast. I think this is going to be part three, hormone and recovery. But we'll kind of touch on it here. How does weight training affect the hormones long term from your experience, Herb?
Uh, Your hormones are all around your skeletal system, your muscle system, the whole bit. It's everything. Weight training, weightlifting, controlling your metabolism basically controls your hormones, right? You affect everything from your thyroid, T3, T4 to testosterone, IGF-1, growth hormone. I mean, everything, right? And that's the rabbit hole you can get down. But it's the proverbial, you heard it before, Kate. I don't have any energy to go to the gym. Well, go to the gym and work out to get the energy,
Yeah,
right? Well, my hormones are shot to shit. I'm gonna go get some from the doctor. Why don't you start working out? It releases hormones.
yeah,
It activates hormones. It tells your body we need hormones and see what you can do and then go from there.
hmm,
But again, uh, Cade we also work with the longevity clinic that works with us to help our clients that are at that level where they want to go up a notch.
Mhm.
So, having ability to, for Cade and I, I've been around for a little while, Cade's been around, but to reach out to other people that have more knowledge and bring them into your team is what I like. Because again, a lot of this information is so much,
Yeah.
right? These rabbit holes you can get down, right, with the
Yeah.
hormones and stuff.
Yeah.
But your hormones are going to, again, that's the reason we quote unquote die, get older, is our hormones drop. We keep our hormone levels up. Are we getting older?
Yeah.
Right? Cellular damage is down. Muscle, like Kate says, I'm building muscle at 60 years old. Who does that?
Yeah.
My body doesn't have time to be injured and sick and die. Shit,
Mhm.
Earth's crushing us. We got to build this muscle. We got no time for this other stuff.
Mhm. Yeah.
So again, I really think that the key is controlling the hormones.
Mhm. Yeah, and we'll kind of go down that rabbit hole, like you said, in a couple of podcasts, and get really into the weeds and this stuff. But you know, like you said, each individual workout, like in the acute time period, right? Like those workouts, training your muscle groups, like it releases hormones, growth hormone, testosterone, right? Like the right hormones to help with the recovery, help your health overall, right? So in the acute time period it helps you, but also long term, right? Because you're gonna build muscle and lose fat, and the more muscle mass you have, the less body fat you have. The leaner you are, the better composition you have, the better your hormones are gonna be in the long term, right? So it's setting you up to feel good in the moment, guys, but also sets you up long term for this longevity that we're talking about. So absolutely huge. And then Herb, this one's going to be a little bit more kind of specific to you and your experience because I know that, obviously you've been doing this stuff for 40 years, right? I'm younger, 30, so a lot of times some of our older clients can't relate to me as much as they just think, "Oh, you're young, what do you know?" type of thing, right? So, but you've had injuries, all that type of stuff, like, and you've already touched on it a little bit, but how have you adjusted your weight training program as you age, and what would you recommend for, as people are aging, like kind of some things you might want to be mindful of and adjust?
But my number one thing is you have to understand what your intent is for training in the first place, right? You can't just walk into a gym and go, well, I'm training for, I'm going to run a marathon, or I'm going to go in here and I'm going to do a bodybuilding show in 6 months, or I just want to be able to play with my grandkids and pick them up and carry them up the stairs and stuff. So first of all, you have to train for intent because the gym is a huge toolbox,
Yeah.
right? And you want to make sure you're using the right tool. I mean, you can pound a nail with a screwdriver. It's just not the best tool to use.
Yeah.
So use the proper tool. So the intent, number one, what injuries have you had over the years? What are we working around injuries? Are we rehabbing an injury at the same time?
Yeah.
What are our limitations physically? That's all,
Mhm.
you know. And then you gotta be respectful of your genetics, guys. I'm 60 years old. My genetics are not great, so I'm not going to run around going, boy, I'd love to be 280 again. It's not going to happen, right? So you have to be a realistic. So, what's your intent for working out? Is this the proper exercises I need to be doing for this type of intent? What kind of injuries am I dealing with? And then, the genetics as far as what am I capable of doing, right?
Yeah.
But like we said, Cade, you don't have to be in the gym every day of the week.
Yeah.
I mean, Cade and I are addicted. We're doing the sports part of it, the competition. That's where we network. That's our local bar, if you will. We go to the gym. We don't go to the
Yeah.
bar,
Yeah.
right? So again, it's knowing your purpose and just executing. And I would be absolutely wouldn't be fair for me to not say you need to seek help. Make sure you know what you're doing because as you get older, injuries
Yeah.
don't recover the way,
Yeah.
so doing stupid shit and thinking you're going to recover from
Yeah.
it's not as easy, you
Yeah.
know.
I know. You know, we've had a couple of clients. I had one client specifically recently tell me like he saw an older lady, stacking up weight on the leg press, about to go do it, and like he stopped her and was like, "Wait a second, like maybe you want to just start with just the weight of just the leg press itself, right?
Right.
Like that lady probably would have hurt herself, right? So, if you're newer to this stuff, guys, and you want to start working on this and set yourself up long term, I would highly recommend like getting on a strategic program to make sure that you're doing it correctly and safely, right? Because I think that's where weight training gets a bad rap in older individuals is, if you don't have a program, you don't have everything dialed in, yeah, you could end up hurting yourself, right? But if you do it the right way, the smart way, then you're just going to set yourself up for long-term health, more muscle, more strength, more mobility, all that type of stuff. So that's huge. And one thing that my mind went to that I've seen some, some research on and just some videos I've watched is, as you age, like you said, kind of with the joints, you can focus a little bit more on like maybe refining certain areas instead of just like hammering big muscle groups, right? Like when you're younger, yeah, focus everything around big compound movements, squat, bench, deadlift, all those things because you can handle it. You're young, you can bounce back quick, right? Your central nervous system is a little bit more primed to handle that stuff when you're younger. As you age, maybe that's the time to kind of like sculpt the marble a little bit more. Like let's work on the rear delts and the upper chest and stuff like that, right? And you can kind of just be a little bit more specific and isolate things a little bit more. That's something that as I'm programming for our older clients, that's something I'm kind of mindful of as well. So, but cool. Anything else you would share on this one as far as workouts for longevity, Herb? That's on your
But
mind?
no, it's just as great that we're in this sport. You can literally start in your teens and do it the rest of your life.
Yeah,
And the
I know.
benefits get more as they go,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So, we talk about the diminishing returns. If we do something too long, it's the opposite on this. The longer you do this, the more it benefits you,
yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff. So again, and there's no bad time to get in it. Like you said, Kate,
yeah,
if
yeah.
you haven't lifted anything and you're 60, that's probably good because well, what I usually tell people is this: I would rather take a newbie than somebody that's been around a little bit
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
then I don't have to break bad habits.
That's true.
You get some
Yeah,
of these guys that have been, I know how to squat, and they're just fucking lower back, and you're like,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
right? So give me somebody that's just open-minded, blank slate, like Kate and I talk about with our clients. You need to be coachable. We need to have you in a situation where you say, yes, coach, I'll execute,
Hmm.
right? And you have to be willing to, be decisive and take action.
Yeah.
So there's a few things that you take that takes to be, successful doing this, but the first one is to make the step, start moving,
Yep.
you
Yeah,
know.
and I wanted to, as you were saying that, it made me think of it that I meant to kind of touch on this too, guys, because we're talking about longevity here. But even if you're younger, like my age, 30 or even younger than that, like you should already be thinking about this stuff, right? Because the earlier you get started, and it's a lot easier to build muscle now, right? So that's going to help you out when you do get older, right? Because what if you're 60, right? And it could have been easier when you were 30, 20 years old to build a ton of muscle, set that foundation, set yourself up later, then you're not playing catch up later on, right? So even if you're younger, I know we're talking about longevity, think about trying to set yourself up for the long term, right? Because it is going to be a little bit easier now to do that. And it's just only going to get a little bit harder as you age, right? So, whether you're old or young, like there's no time like the present. Like start setting yourself up. So,
Immediate.
yeah. But good stuff. Hope you guys got some takeaways here. Hope this resonates with you. Let us know if you guys got any questions on this specifically. Put it in the comments. But part two is going to be around nutrition. Okay, so this one was kind of working out for longevity. Next one's going to be kind of nutrition for longevity. Our part three will be recovery and hormones. All right, guys. So put this stuff into practice. Reach out if you got questions. We'll see you guys in the next video. But in the meantime, elevate every damn day. Peace.
Elevate. Only obligation is to tell it straight.